remember just crossing the finish line. We just immediately like just embraced and we're like, holy crap, dude! Like how the heck? Like how did that? We just moved 50 miles on our feet. And I reflect back and like I said before, I went to England. I cycle a lot with my dad, and I remember thinking like, how the heck can anyone run a marathon? And here I am. I just ran 50 miles. And like, immediately I'm like, why do people put limits on abilities? Like it is just fascinating because I never thought in a million years I'd be able to do that. And it gets you very emotionally stimulated where I'm like, I remember hugging my friend Kyle and just being, he was so proud of me. And just be able to have that support system with a friend group is like, it's truly incredible. So community and being able to like share moments with friends like this is just something I'll never forget for sure.
This is your host, Brendan, and you're listening to the Ordinary to Ultra podcast. This podcast is all about helping you run your first ultramarathon and beyond. Tune in to hear new and experienced ultra runners share how they got into running in the first place, what inspired them to run an ultra, training and race day tips, and the gripping story of their first ultramarathon. Prepare yourself to be inspired as you hear stories of grit, sometimes failure, but ultimately triumph when our guests finally cross the finish line. Hey Jake, thanks so much for being here today with me, dude. Super excited to chat with you. We met because of Anthony, who we recorded just a few weeks ago. I think we aired his episode, and I'm so glad he introduced us.
Yeah, me too, man. I can't wait. It's a little bit of a long time coming, and I'm glad to come in here and share my story and get other people inspired to do their own races. So
that's right, dude. We're gonna share your amazing story and get some other people pumped for some ultra marathons. Super excited to get into it. Before we get into the juicy deets of like your history and how you got into this thing, I was hoping you could introduce yourself, like how old you are, where you live, what you do for work, if you have a family, what that looks like, that sort of thing.
Sure. Yeah, so my name is Jake Kampner. I currently reside in the wonderful Boston, Massachusetts. Not too many ultras going around here, so you have to venture out a little bit here and there. So I do, for work, I do exercise physiology research at Brigham and Women's, which is one of the Mass General affiliate hospitals here in Boston. So obviously I like to exercise on my own, and then I also work and exercise, so I'm always surrounded by activity going on, so I really enjoy that.
Nice.
I have a twin sister who also lives in Boston. She runs a little bit here and there. She's done some marathons, but not nearly as much as me. I'm really the only runner in my family. My dad's a big cyclist. My mom's a big walker. Originally from Massachusetts. And yeah, I'm just out here enjoying life, doing races as much as I can. Just trying to do it with family, friends, and running in the Boston community has really been a blessing and has had an incredible impact on my life, more than I ever thought it would. And I'm looking forward to doing more in the future.
That's sick, man. How old did you say you were again?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm 26.
You're 26? Okay. I was just curious. Yeah. Cool. I'm 27. What's up? Woohoo.
Hell yeah.
Youngsters.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. That's sweet. You're in Boston. So naturally, the first question I have to ask you before we even get into your history is if you've run the Boston Marathon.
Yes, I have. I ran it last year.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so unfortunately I'm not fast enough to qualify nowadays because the times have just been gotten crazy. But I did run it for a charity. Shout out to Stride for Stride, which is a near and dear charity in my heart that raises money for low-income immigrant communities who can't afford to buy bibs and shoes for themselves. So I had the opportunity to fundraise for them. And that's
sweet.
I ran Boston last year for them, so it was a really cool opportunity.
Oh, that's awesome, dude. Good for you.
Thank you.
And then, so did you qualify last year, or you didn't have to qualify because you did the charity bib? Oh, that's
Exactly. Yeah.
cool. That's super
Yeah.
cool. I would never qualify,
No,
so it's cool you can
it's
get it
crazy.
in.
It is very stressful. I will warn anyone that it's extremely rewarding to fundraise for a charity, but it is very stressful. So you gotta
Yeah.
dot your lines and plan your T's accordingly because it is stressful. But I guarantee you, it's really cool to see how many people are willing to support you and the charity that you're fundraising for. So it's really cool.
Can we take a detour before we even get into history? I would love to hear more about what that looks like.
Yeah,
I haven't talked to too many people about fundraising and what that
sure,
looks like, but yeah, what was the rewarding stuff? What was the struggle? I would love to hear about it.
sure. So basically, I've, as a Bostonian, it's one of been, if you're a runner, it's kind of like a bucket list thing. You want to do the six major marathons, and obviously you want to run Boston. Um,
Yeah.
so basically, I was trying to see if I could do a fundraiser, and I applied here, applied there, and then, I was like, okay, it's just not going to happen this year.
Hmm.
And funny enough, my mom actually worked with someone who's a big runner and basically knew a guy who knew a guy. And she said,
Okay.
"Hey, this is this new charity called Stride for Stride. Would you want me to connect with this founder, Tom O'Keefe?" And I said, "Sure." And reached out to him. I said, "I'm looking to run Boston, and I think what you're doing for the community is really cool." And yeah, next thing you know, I met with him. He said okay, and ran. Me and my sister both fundraised for Stride for Stride, so we ended up fundraising around $18,000 total.
Eighteen
Which
thousand
was
dollars?
yeah, yeah. So we both
That's
had to raise
fantastic.
around 8,000, and we ended up doing around 18,000.
Oh my goodness. Was there like
Yeah,
a minimum that you
eight
had to
thousand
do?
per, eight
Oh my
thousand per.
gosh.
Yeah.
That's like what the race required.
So it's interesting. So with these world major marathons, it kind of varies the charity that you run for. So for example, some might say you need to raise 8,000, or some might say you need 10,000. It's completely depictive of like what the charity wants to do. Um, and I couldn't tell you how many actual charities there are per these major marathons usually, but there's a lot of different charities. Like there's St. Jude's, there's Goodwill, there's the one I did, there's Boston Children's, there's a bunch of different charities. But
Uh-huh.
I would say the coolest part is like knowing how many people are actually willing to help you and for your cause. It's really incredible. Um, but you definitely got to get very technical and innovative with like how you do this. So like one of the things me and my sister did was this Super Bowl squares where basically it was betting on like different number patterns of like how the Super Bowl play out would be. That was one way we fundraise. We had a couple fundraisers, one at a brewery, one at a sports bar with these raffle baskets and stuff like that. So that was another big poll. Yeah, you just got to get really technical with it and take it day by day. And, it is stressful because you're like, should more people be donating by now or this or that? But I realize like most of the time, all the people tend to donate a lot of like later on, like right before the
Yeah.
marathon. So,
Yep. Deadlines.
yes,
I
exactly,
get that.
deadline. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm just curious, will they not let you run if you don't hit your mark?
No, they'll let you run, but it's all coming out of your pocket if you don't raise it. Which is, so say you raise only 5 grand and you needed to raise 8 grand, you're paying 3 grand. So
Holy
it's,
moly.
yeah.
Okay,
So
yeah, there is
all
pressure.
your chips are in, man. Yeah, like if you're fundraising, like your chips are in. You gotta pay
Yeah.
due. So
My
that's
goodness.
the risk. Is like you gotta fundraise. You gotta raise that money, or else you're gonna be screwed.
Dang.
Yeah, but we did it.
Do lesser races function the same way? Like less big
Definitely.
races?
Definitely, like you'll definitely have some races here and there that will do charity fundraising, but like it's incomparable to these six major marathons. Like the charities fundraising for all these six major marathons are by far the biggest things that you
The
need to do.
biggest.
Hmm.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's cool. Thanks for sharing, dude. That's really cool that you did
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
and made it happen. Okay. Now, I would, if you're ready, I'd like to get into your past. So, Jake,
Hit me.
what got you into running? And I mean, it sounds like you've been into fitness for maybe a while, but specifically running and fitness if you want. But what got you into
No, we can
running
go
in the
running.
first place? And
Yes.
when was that?
So, funny enough, I was never a runner. Growing up, I hated running. I actually played lacrosse in college, and I was a goalie. Specifically, I was a good goalie, but I specifically became a goalie because I hated running.
Nice.
So
Yes.
that's kind of ironic, right? And then basically, I started running a little bit in high school, and I had a really bad wrist injury. Long story short, I had a cast for about half a year from a bad carpal tunnel incident in my wrist. So I kind of dipped in it a little bit here and there. Kind of fell back out of it. Then in college, one of my teammates, he actually got cancer, um, and his number was 10. So our whole objective to help spread the awareness for him and his cancer fight was either doing something of 10 miles. So whether it was a 10-mile walk, a 10-mile run, 10-mile bike, whatever the case may be, just to show your support and be like hashtag Bossy Strong, which is what his last name was. So I ended up doing 10 miles of running for that. So I was like, oh, that was like really cool. Like that was the first big kind of running challenge that I did. And then kind of took a little bit of step back, and I went over to England after my undergraduate to get my master's. Um, and I was there during COVID, and as you can presume, like I didn't have any friends or family really there because I was new there, obviously, and I was like, I want to see the city, but like I don't have a car, don't really, can't do this, can't do that. And I'm like, oh, I was watching Nick Bear, if you following him, and he's talking about this hybrid athlete approach. So I'm like, all right, I'll try running like 15 or 20 miles a week with the lifting, and see what we can do. And I don't know what happened, man, but the running just like it changed my whole perspective on fitness. And long story short, I kept it going when I was over there, brought it back with me when I came back here, and just never stopped. So it's been going since 2020, and here I am still running every day. And yeah, that was the origin of really my running.
Nick Bear, who I have seen, he pops up in my feed. I don't watch his stuff much, but he's a huge dude. Like I see him, he's a built guy, and you're like,
yes.
And then he filmed himself doing some ultras, I think, and I was like, this guy's running ultramarathons. Like this guy is way too big to be running ultramarathons.
Not only the ultras, he's also done he just did like a sub 240 marathon at like 190 pounds of pure meat. It's just crazy. And then the ultras, like you said, he's just done these 100-milers, and it's crazy.
It's proven you can be super built. And
it's on your head.
Yeah, dude.
Literally.
Goggins style. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay. So 2020, you started getting into running to see
just
the
test
city.
The waters, Yeah, test the waters, see the city where I was living, and I just got addicted to it.
Yeah, that's real.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm struggling to know what question to ask next. I'm like curious what you, as a exercise physiology guy, like, did you start running too because you just wanted to be more well-rounded?
I honestly, I could say yes, but I really was I think I was just getting bored of just lifting. Like, I'm like, it would be cool to be able to say, like, yeah, I can go run and go lift in the same day and be able to have both those types of physiques going on. So I don't really know, like, why the temptation really pushed me, because like I said, I never really liked running before that. And then I just started to enjoy it so much when I was over there. And just like I said, just carried over. So I think now more than ever, because I am an exercise physiologist, like I have a crap ton of interest when I see, patients that we have come in who has the bigger VO2 and who has a running background. You can clearly see that fluctuation. So now I'm definitely like a junkie when it comes to seeing those numbers, like when we're doing testing, for sure.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
When you started running, I'm curious if there was a certain like mileage where it became fun, or like how long did it take for you for
Sure.
running to be fun? Because it took me a while, but what about you?
Yeah. I would say like I probably started off running around 15 miles a week. I would say like that. And then, like I tell everyone, there's three major steps you have to take when you are building is like not neglecting strength training. I think that's one of the biggest issues that a lot of people have. And then they fight these injuries. And then, they say there's this battle going on where they're, always injured or this or that is flaring up. So I would say like, you're really never going to enjoy it if you're obviously in pain. So I would say like if you're still building up those compounding miles of strength training, um, and then just the mindset approach where you got to take it day by day and know like nothing's going to gradually happen overnight. So I would say I started enjoying it when I was like casually being able to do like a 3 or 4 mile run without even thinking about it. I think that was probably like my point where I'm like, okay, like this is a really good fitness standpoint where I know I can do 3, 4 miles and be able to, be completely okay and go walk around after doing that. Like that felt really good. And then eventually getting to those double digit days and being able to knock those out very comfortably, if I prepared the right way and stuff like that. I would say that's when it really got fun, where I'm like, okay, I'm reaching a peak fitness at the time. I'm reaching this type of fitness that I've never been able to do, and that was really cool. I don't know about you. What do you think?
I totally concur with that 100%. It's like when you're only running like a mile or 2 miles,
Yeah.
it just didn't feel great. I mean, you're just starting to run and it hurts. You might be experiencing, I was experiencing knee pain and ankle pain, and
Mm-hmm.
you just get tired because you're not used to it. Your muscles aren't used to it. And I didn't have the right running shoes. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
it's a gear thing.
Yeah.
But then when I got good shoes and I could run, my muscles were used to running, and my ligaments running like 3 or 4 miles, like you said. And then I think that's when it started to become more fun too. And then like when I could run regularly 6 miles, it was like, this is totally like a game changer. Like I can go out and have a real, like for me is like, I can have a real adventure, like a real nature outing for like an hour, in that amount of time.
Yeah. Like that's one of the, I'm sure you get this a lot too, is like how the heck are you running 7 or 8 miles every day? And I'm like, you gotta reiterate to people, I'm like, it doesn't happen overnight. I'm like, I started running in 2020 and it's been 4 years, and like now I can run 60 to 70 miles a week and be okay. And I think a lot of people, whether it's running or these other factors, people just look for the easy way in. Um, and here's a perfect example. Like I'm shooting for a sub 3 marathon this year, which is a 6:45 pace, and last year that was my 5K pace. So like it's the build. So that's the thing, is like if you can like have a set plan and a set amount of goals specifically. I tell people who are just starting, if you're doing 10 miles a week, then 15, and then 20, and then eventually you could get to, that level that you want to be at, but you just got to start incrementally. And once you get to that fun spot and you can keep building up that fun spot, like you said, like that's where you really see the growth. And it's really cool to look back at.
It sure, well said, dude. Well said, Jake. I need to get more exercise physiology folks on here.
Yeah.
Fantastic insight. So to anyone out there that's just getting into this thing, you're experiencing the pain miles right now. Like there is, the grass is greener on the other side. It actually is, though. You just gotta get a little bit farther. You'll start getting that what's the hormone that makes you happy when you run too?
Oh, the
You know what I'm
endorphin
saying?
release.
Endorphins. You'll start getting
Yeah,
those endorphins too.
yeah,
Anyway, and it's fun when you can go out for an extended period of time. It's sweet.
yeah,
Just keep going. Consistency. They say it.
yeah.
Consistency is key, and it's true. Just keep going and up it a little bit every time.
Nick Bare actually has a great quote. He said, or he reiterates it from his running coach, but it's better to be consistently good than occasionally great. You know?
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, man. So back to your story. You were running in 2020. You started getting into it. Did you at that time? You said I wanted to go out, get out, see the city, maybe
Yep.
try to get fit in a different way, running. But when did like your racing come
Sure.
into this? Where did you start with like 5Ks, 10Ks, or did you start with the marathon, or how
I
did
dipped.
that happen?
I dipped right into the marathon. That was my first
Holy
race.
moly! Dang.
So again, to Nick Bare, I was just watching one of his videos. So I was doing this hybrid athlete, but I wasn't really. I was like, I'm scared to do a marathon. There's no way I could actually do a marathon successfully, and I don't know what the end result would be. Basically, he had a video where he was training for one of his races. I don't remember which one, but at the end of it, he just in a very brute way of saying, he's like, just stop thinking about whatever you're like, you want to do this race, stop thinking about it and just effing do it. Like, just stop thinking about it. I'm like, and I don't know, I was just like, you know what, he's right. Like, who cares? And next thing you know, I signed up for the Sugarloaf Marathon in 2022, which is if people don't know, that's a ski resort in Maine. And that was my first marathon, and it went pretty well. I ran that one in around 3 hours and 20 minutes. That was my first marathon.
Dang. 3 hours and
Yeah,
20 minutes?
yeah,
Wow. That's
yeah,
fantastic, dude.
yeah. Thank you.
And I love that. Just do it.
Yeah,
That is. Go ahead.
the greatest limitation with anything is always yourself, and sometimes you really just got to push that self doubt. Whether it's for a race, video making, or starting a podcast, as long as you believe in it, that's all that matters. So you just gotta flip that switch, and that's kind of what I did in that case. So
Yeah, dude. That's sweet.
yeah,
And I know less trained people who also push that button and do it. I think the episode will come out right before this, where I interviewed Jamie, who signed up for a 50K on a whim. I don't think she'd never run a marathon.
wow.
Maybe she had run a half before. She had never run anything like this, and she just did it because it was she is a personal trainer, and a client of hers was like, I think she was talking to her client like, we should do this just kind
So
of for
cool.
fun. And then her
Yeah,
client was like, yep. And the client signed up. She was like, frick. And then she signed up anyway.
yeah,
So, and she only had 2 months to train, and she made it
yeah,
happen still. Like,
yeah.
you can
Sometimes you
do
just
it.
gotta send it, 100%.
Full send.
Yeah,
Okay, so this was your marathon, and you did a 3:20. That's fantastic. And that was in the year of 2020, 2021?
22.
22. Okay, so you were
Yeah.
running for like 2 years for
Mhm.
fun more
Yep.
before you started doing the racing.
Yeah. So I was in England for fun racing. So I went there in the fall of 2020, and I was there for a year. So pretty much the end of 2021. Came back and then carried over that running, like I said, and then ran in May of 2022. That was the first race.
Sick.
Yeah.
Okay, and since then, you have run how many marathons?
I have now run 8. So I've done,
8
uh,
marathons.
I did, like I said, Sugarloaf was the first. Then I did a following one in the summer. And then last year was just crazy, and I did 5 last year.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah,
That's fantastic. That's
yeah.
sweet. Way to push yourself.
Thanks.
I'd like to, if you could, I'd like to have you give maybe a few quick tips and pointers. If anyone here is training for a marathon before they're thinking about a 50K, because I know it's
Yes,
a fairly common route,
yes.
what mileage would you maybe suggest they do? Any
Sure,
tips that are maybe generally applicable to folks that
sure,
are training?
sure. I would say, for a normal mileage, like my first marathon, I didn't go over 45. So I would say if you're starting from a ground zero type of approach for your first marathon, unless you're consistently doing around 30 to 40 miles a week as it is before you're running a marathon, I would say like not doing more than around 45 miles a week if you're just starting out. If you are already running around 30 miles a week before running your first marathon, I would say you could get upwards of that 55 to 60 miles. I think that would be a great peak amount of mileage. Um, for just a general standpoint, like I said, the 3 things that I recommend to a T for everyone who's running a marathon, no matter where you're starting out, is strength training. So specifically with legs, and a lot of knees over toes type of approach. So a lot of the time you see people with a lot of hip and knee injuries, um, mainly because when you are, if you think about it, like if you're an adult, most of the time, probably 90% of you're walking straight forward and never sideways, never backwards. So a lot of the time you see a lot of these weak hip muscles, especially, and that's when it gets into play where you see a lot of people with hip injuries. And then, like I said, knees. If you're not rotating the right amount of shoes, if you're not taking care of your legs with these strength training days or stretching, then that's when you see a lot of these injury play because with all this foot impact, you're basically just trying to look to distribute the weight when you're running any way your body can figure it out. And that's different for everyone. So those 3 things that I think everyone needs to do is strength training, compounding miles, and then speed work if you can implement it. And it doesn't have to be anything crazy. It could be, 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, for 5 sets of 5 or something like that. Or it could be, 4 sets at 800s or hill sprints or something like that, just to get not just the easy miles in, but also trying to working that threshold to make your race day that much easier. I would say those are my 3 live by things you need to do.
Well said.
Yeah.
And you said, what was your tip number 2? Was that the strength training tip?
So strength training,
No,
compounding
compound training.
miles,
Compounding
just
miles.
compounding miles, yeah.
Is
Just
that just
mileage over
adding more?
time.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, or
Okay.
just being like having a disciplined set of mileage that you need to hold a standard to. So
Mm-hmm.
saying I want to hold, throughout my marathon build, I want to hold at least 20 miles a week and gradually make that go up week by week or something like that.
Yeah.
Or I want to work up to, at my top mileage, I would like to work up to 55 miles a week and be able to be comfortable and sustain that. So sticking to the
Nice.
plan. I would say those are like my 3 top things. And then
Mm-hmm.
no matter if you're ultra running or straight running, I always say like you need to have a shoe rotation. A minimal, I would say at least 3 different pairs of shoes that you're comfortable with, because that's when you see a lot of injuries as well if people are utilizing the same shoes over and over and over again.
And
Every
that
shoe is different.
messes with their, what usually? Knees?
I would say knees because you don't want your it's everything. I would say plantar fasciitis. I would say knees, hips. If you're like every pair of shoes is different. Some have more energy return. Some have a greater upper, which means the variation of trot could be a little bit different. Like I have some shoes that have very minimal amount of energy return and some that have a lot of energy return, or some that have a little bit of cushion, some have a lot of cushion. If you're constantly rotating, then your feet and your knees and your hips are never going to get used to the same pair of shoes that it's using. And I think that kind of plays a trick counterpart towards injury prevention.
Yeah. That seems smart.
Yeah,
Yeah, so your body doesn't get used to that one pair. Then you buy a new
exactly.
pair and it like
Exactly.
messes you up.
Yeah.
Interesting. Great
Yeah.
advice. Take it to heart. People training for your first marathon. I did that. I trained for a marathon first before my 50K that's coming up soon. So
Nice.
that's awesome, man. Okay, so you ran several marathons, and then ultra running. So how did this 50K come into your life? I mean, or even when did you learn about ultra running? And then
Sure.
when did this 50K show up in your life?
Um, I would say the first time I saw 50K was maybe like I want to say it might have been watching just it might have been Billy Yang on YouTube. That was probably like the first
Billy
time I really,
Yang.
yeah,
He
I'm sure
gets
you've heard of him.
everybody.
I think that was like the first time I really saw it, and then I started seeing videos of like UTMB, and I'm like, oh wow, this would be kind of a crazy thing to do. And
Yeah.
like I said, a mutual friend that me and Anthony both knew, I was talking to a little bit here and there, and he just kept pressuring me and said like, you're in such good fitness, like, why don't you test the waters a little bit and see what else you could do? And I've always been an outdoors guy. Like me and Anthony have been friends for a very long time. I don't know if he went into detail about that,
How
but
long?
since we were probably 14, so it's been like
Okay.
over 10 years. Like he's literally like
Sick.
my brother. He's,
Cool.
Um, but so I've always hiked with Anthony, and I've always liked being outside and doing stuff in the whites and stuff like that. And this friend Nate was just pressuring me in a good way. He's just like, I think you could really do this. I think we would have a lot of fun. I'm like, okay. Um, and I knew, like I said, I was doing all these marathons. I'm like, my fitness is definitely good. I think I could do it. And to my shock, it went like extremely well. Like I didn't have really any issues the entire time. I was able to eat food okay. I did all the trails okay. Legs obviously gradually got a little bit heavier later on. So that was my first 50K. I did that in New York, and it went really smooth. And yeah,
Okay. So, but I'd like to hear in a little bit, in a second, like more detail about how the 50K went.
sure.
Like as much as you can remember. But before that, what did your training look like for the 50K?
Honestly, like I did some trail runs here and there, but nothing out of the way. Like I basically was just trying to keep the mileage that I was doing on the road,
Okay.
and then just kind of trusted my physical ability to be able to do it. Like I said last year, I was just on a tear of doing so many miles that I was like, I think I'm in a great spot to be able to do one. So there were some local, little yuppie trails around Massachusetts that I was doing, but it wasn't anything too significant. Um, and I kind of just full on just sent it, and the course itself wasn't crazy elevation, so um, it was hard at some points, but I kind of just like I said, I don't really know where that switch turned, but I just really trusted my physical ability and just kind of sent it, see what I could do.
Mm-hmm. So you didn't mention how many miles you were putting in, did you? No.
I would say like last year I was probably doing around 60 miles a week, I would say 50 to 60.
Yeah. And leading up to the
Um,
50K.
yeah, probably 50 to 60.
Yeah. And you had marathons that were like around this time too, I think, right?
Yeah. So most of the marathons I did were in the fall, and this was in June last year. So at this
Okay.
point, uh, I did a marathon in January last year, and then I did Boston, and then the next thing was this 50K. So by this time I did two marathons before. So my mileage is already high. and I just kind of kept it rolling. And like I said, did some trail running here and there, but nothing too crazy, and just kind of
Yeah.
instinctually thought I could be able to do it.
Yeah. I mean, with that many miles, that's a lot of miles.
Yeah.
For, I mean, a 50K. You know, if your goal is to finish a 50K, you're putting
hmm
in plenty of
Which it
miles to do
was.
that.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I had no time differential at all. Like my goal was just to do it and have fun with it, and that's exactly what I did.
Okay. So that's what training looked like. And was nutrition different for this than it was for your marathons?
Yeah. So I would say so. Also, I didn't mention so my background, like I have an undergrad degree in exercise science and my master's is in sport and exercise nutrition. So
Nutrition.
yeah, so obviously that kind of goes hand in hand. But I would say like for my marathons, it was more strategical with like, I was doing the classic carb like bagel, peanut butter, banana, honey before my long runs, and really for the ultra, I have a pretty good stomach too. I've never had any GI issues. That's another thing is like if you are someone who has issues with you do. Yeah.
I don't, but I'm
Oh,
like
okay.
salute you because there's
Yeah.
very many people who do. So yeah,
So I
blessed.
was just, I mean, there was absolutely no strategies towards what I was eating. I had some gels here and there. I had some gummy bears. Like I had pizza that they gave us, fruit. Like
Ooh,
I was
nice.
just kind of, yeah, I was having it all. And like I said, I'm fortunate enough where I don't have stomach issues ever. So the nutrition was very sporadic in ultras, same as the 50 mile when I did that, like very sporadic versus the marathon. It's very strategic, I would say.
Yeah, I mean you're trying to hit this times like food
Yeah,
food costs time.
exactly.
So yeah, that makes sense that that's more strategic, and the way it fuels you probably as well. But
Yeah,
um, okay, that's good to know. And the 50K. So you didn't mention too much about the course, but it's in New York, and like it's a 50K, so it's like 31 miles. But
yeah.
what was the elevation gain like on this guy?
I I want to say total it might have been around 4,500.
Okay, solid.
Um, yeah, it was actually really well done. It was an inaugural race. It was called like the Fabulous Vanity Trail Races or something like that. So it was
Hmm.
in a reservation area of New York, so a little bit over the border of Connecticut. But
Okay.
it was actually really well done, really planned out very well, and yeah, it was about 4,500 feet elevation. So nothing too crazy. There was some ups and downs at some points, but it's a pretty smooth course.
Yeah, over 31 miles. That's some solid elevation gain. Not too hefty.
Yeah,
I'd say. Okay. So, like I mentioned before, I'd love to hear in as much detail as you remember, like how you felt, like the moment you
sure,
woke up, like how much sleep you got, what you ate for
sure.
breakfast, was it the
Yeah,
bagel thing?
yeah,
And then how you felt like when the race started, were you feeling pumped, anxious?
sure.
Anything notable that happened during the race? And then how you felt when you crossed the finish line.
Yeah, I would say so. The days leading up, I was doing kind of the same carbohydrate buildup that I would with all these other marathons that I've done. So
Carb load.
so I'm about 185, 190 pounds. So usually when I do carb load, I aim around 600 grams of carbs. So I always say like if you can go for at least like 2 grams per kilogram of body weight, that's usually like a good number to think. So 575 to 600 for someone my size for a 2 to 3 day build. And then I still remember the day before I had a nice fat burger and fries with wings and stuff like that. And
Let's go.
the bagel, peanut butter, banana, honey is like a staple for me before any type of race, and has been for all these ultras, these marathons. So I've done that with some
Okay.
carbohydrate powder. So going around 100 to 125 grams of carbohydrates before running. Um, and I remember like starting it off and being like, you know, am I ready for this? And like I said, there's something you need to realize when you are signing up for these races. Like, it's you versus you, and you just gotta believe like you did everything in your power to conquer what you're about to do. Um, so I remember starting it, and I was lucky enough where my number one recommendation, if you can find anyone to run with, that helps tremendously. So I ended up meeting this girl who was from Boston, who I actually ran the entire thing with, which was crazy. Um, so the whole time it was very conversational. Yeah, we just talked the entire time, and I would
Uh,
say, yeah,
can I stop you really quick?
yeah, yeah,
Wasn't your friend here?
Nate, yeah, but he
Yeah.
he he
Was
was
he like,
slower. He's just
he
a
was
little bit
slower?
slower, yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
I'm like, is he cruising? Is he slower? Okay. And Anthony didn't do this because wasn't he sick? Was he gonna do it?
I don't honestly remember. I
I
feel like
think he said he was.
he
I know
did.
he
He
dropped out of one.
It wasn't this one. I don't
Okay.
exactly remember why he didn't do it. Because he does do Muay Thai as well, so I don't remember if he was fighting or something like that.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
yeah, that's right.
I can't
Okay,
remember.
but okay, so you're running with this chick, and you met her the same day.
Yeah, yeah, we parked
Cool.
right next to her, so it was a nice early wake up. We stayed at a hotel, and of course, like any other race, like I was definitely anxious because I didn't know what I was getting myself into. But I said, that's some like after doing these races, you realize like that's kind of when you can learn a lot about like your ability and what you can do. And I think that's always a lot of the time people just are afraid to dip into that unknown. And I think, kudos to my friend Nate because he's the one who really pushed me to dip into that unknown. And yeah, so I was anxious and started off going hot. And to be honest, like it is rare, but like this race, I didn't really feel at any point where I was like worried I wouldn't be able to finish. I definitely did with the 50 miler, but for the 50K, I did not have any angst or worry about being able to finish. I remember at some point, like, some of the hills were giving me a little bit of foot pain here and there.
Hmm.
But other than that, I would say the feet out of anything just got pretty heavy around like 25. I was
Hmm.
wearing ultras, so the wide toe box and stuff like that kind of caught up to me later on in the race. But other than that, yeah, I was super happy with the end result.
And by that, the wide toe box caught up with you in what way?
I would just say like there's less energy return versus if you were wearing like a speed goat.
Oh,
You
uh
know what I
huh.
mean? If we're in a speed goat, that it's going to be a little bit more cushion, so a little bit more energy return versus I always said like I thought my thing was like at least for lower miles, like I like feeling the ground when I am trail running versus on the road I don't really want to feel the road that much.
Yeah.
But I realize when you do these long endurance challenges, like it's definitely like not the way you want to be. At least for me, like I think you definitely want some cushion if you're going to be on your feet for 7, 8, 9 hours, something like that. I think cushion definitely can be really important.
So you're feeling the rocks. Were you feeling the rocks after
Yeah,
a
I
few
would say my
hours?
my feet my feet really more than anything were just really bothering me like the most. And I wouldn't say bother like pain. They're just like, ugh, you're almost done. Like at 25, I would say.
Hmm. Okay. Um. Okay. And no other issues though. You said you're doing pretty good. And were you
Yeah,
keeping what pace were you keeping? Were you keeping the same pace? Did you slow
yeah.
down?
No, not really. I would say like we kind of went with the classic route. More so at the end, like run the flats, hike the ups, and then trot the downs. So I would say that's exactly what I did for the 50 miler too. Is just trot the flats, hike the ups, and trot the downs, and that's pretty much what we stuck to the entire time. I would say like, I mean, I'm sure you can attest to this. Like when you're doing these really long endurance challenges, there's some times when you're like extremely fatigued for maybe 10 to 15 minutes. And then sometimes there's just like a flip of the switch for whatever reason where you just get this surge of energy for like another 10 to 15 minutes right after you feel like you were dying. Um, that's what's kind of cool about doing these ultras. You just kind of find these little switches that you didn't know were going on.
The wall, and then
Hmm.
the other side of the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's real. So you got to the finish line, and how did you feel? Like, what were the feelings that you had mentally, physically,
Yeah.
emotionally?
So I finished. So like I said, I finished with this friend that I met, and I was just super proud of both of us. And um, you know, at first I was like, you know, I knew could be able to do that, but at the same time, I'm like, wow, I just moved my body more than I ever have, and like, and able to still stand and like be consciously aware of like what I just did. I'm like, that was crazy. And then immediately, the right after, I'm like, oh, I could do more than that. Like that was like within 3 to 5 minutes of finishing. I'm like, I definitely could keep going. Because
Dang.
before I did this 50K, I was like, there's no way I could ever do a 50 miler. Or before the 50K, I'm like, there's no way I could ever do a 50K.
Yep.
So that was immediately like where I thought of right away. It was like I could do more than that.
That's so funny. It hit you so quick.
Yeah, it did.
Because you still had gas in the tank.
I did, yeah. And like I said, I was never at a point running that where I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna finish.
Yeah.
I think I prepared really well, and like I said, I've been always very good about the nutrition because that is my background, and the
Yeah.
build, the miles were there, and I just never reached a point where I was worried that I was gonna finish.
Yeah. Okay. So you finished. And let's see, that was June of 2023.
Yes.
Okay. And okay, so you signed up for your 50 miler. How soon did you sign up for your 50 miler?
It wasn't immediate. So, like I
Okay.
said, I still had so I did those three last marathons at the end of 2023.
Okay.
Um, and then about this time, I actually moved so I lived at home with my parents when I came back from England for a year. And then at this time, I moved out into Boston and I started doing Tracksmith Run Club, which is, if you've heard of Tracksmith, the running company. Um, I was doing workouts with them in the summer. I started meeting a bunch of people, a bunch of friends who have made a huge impact on my life. And this group of guys who I'm really close with, we just started stirring up this idea. And like, one of my really good friends moved to Denver from Boston.
Hmm.
So he's like, when do you guys want to come out? Like, we should start looking at doing a 50 miler. And I was like, at first, I'm like, nah, like, not right now. And, good friends being good friends, he just was like, kept asking and asking and asking, started a group message and asking. And then finally, I don't know how, I don't know if it took one person to say yes, but then one said yes, another said yes. And next thing you know, I'm like, all right, I guess I'm running a 50 miler and just sent it. And I did that in January.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, like 6 months from your 50K,
Yeah.
you ran a 50 miler. So you were already putting in like 60 miles a week
Yeah.
for your 50K. Did you change your training much for this 50 miler? What
Um,
happened?
to be honest, no, I was still doing a lot of road running. I would say the mileage went up. So basically this year, until the marathon I just did, I was probably have been running around 70 miles a week. So since
Goodness
January,
gracious.
yeah, since this year I've been running around 70 miles a week.
70,000.
Yeah,
Cool.
imagine.
Imagine.
So really, nothing really changed, just upping the mileage. And like I said, I was doing consistently a lot more speed work and strength training and stuff like that. So what I just told you, those three pillars that I live by, and um, yeah,
Good for you, dude. Yeah, I don't do speed work or strength training right now, so you're inspiring me.
Yeah, you gotta do
to be better, because I know I would be having a better time out there, I'm sure, if I did.
it. Yeah.
It was just the other day I did almost a half marathon with 3,500 feet of elevation gain, and it kicked my butt. And I was like, bet if I did some strength training, my legs wouldn't be so shot right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyhow, enough about me. So, that's the mileage you were putting in, like 70, which, by the way, I've talked to several, lots of people who do hundreds, and that's like the sort of mileage 100-mile people
Oh,
are
geez,
putting in.
don't get in my head,
So
Brendan.
I'm in your head, man. Like, you could totally do that.
Oh, God.
Just saying. Maybe put some more trail miles in. I don't know if that makes a
Yeah.
difference. I mean, you're proving that maybe you don't need to, but okay. So you'd be putting in a lot of miles, 70 miles. And any other big changes before the 50 miler?
Like I
know.
said, I think I was doing a lot more speed work than I was the
Yeah.
previous year. And my biggest thing as well that I try to tell people is practicing on tired legs. So one of the biggest, so like my Wednesdays, so that's when I usually do speed work. I was doing legs in the morning and then and then doing the speed workouts in the afternoon. So I think practicing on tired legs is one of the most hidden advantage that you can help yourself with. Because everyone's gonna reach at a point, especially with like these ultra marathons, where you're gonna have tired legs, and if you're not prepared to be able to continue with tired legs, then you're kind of gonna be screwed. So I've stated that to a lot, including on my Instagram, like is trying to tell people like if you can practice on tired legs, I think that's one of the best things you can do.
That's fantastic advice. Did you do back-to-back long runs ever?
I've definitely done some back-to-back doubles. But like I said, I've never like even before this 50 miler, I never went out and did like a 35-mile run or anything. Like the most I did was like these long distance road miles, like I would do 22 or something like that.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, would you
I
say it's really cumulative miles or cumulative time on your feet versus mega long
yeah,
run?
I would say like practicing that high mileage is a good thing. However, I would say if you have a really strong mental ability, um, and you can do a certain compounding miles like throughout a week that you can stick to, then you're gonna be more than fine. So to get into detail, like there was five of us who ran this 50 miler, and I ended up running it, long story short, with one kid who really was not doing a lot of miles. It was a friend of a friend who went with us to visit this friend in Denver. And basically like he's a busy dude with his work, so he was only doing like 10 to 15 miles a week on a treadmill like in Ohio. But he did the entire 50 miler with me because he was so mentally able. You know what I mean?
Holy frick.
So like some people just are like mentally able more than others, like from a physical feat. Obviously I wouldn't recommend that, but like it's yeah.
Well, don't tell me how he was after yet. But I want to know.
Yeah.
Okay, so similar to the 50K, I'd love to know like how it all went from
Sure.
the night before when you or the
Sure.
morning of throughout
Yeah.
the whole thing till you reach the finish line. What
Yeah.
did that look like?
Yeah, so like I said, my one friend moved out to Denver, and four of us went out together. So we flew out, went to Denver, same carb load type of ordeal. So I was eating a
Okay.
crap ton 3 to 4 days before. So we all went out, had a pretty crappy sleep in Denver when we got there. We were staying at his apartment, so it was like makeshift type of crappy air mattress.
Yeah.
So following day we packed up, left extremely early, drove to Salt Lake because it was in Utah.
Let's go.
And yeah, we got an Airbnb, went to the grocery, did the normal amount of food. And this one I was definitely a lot more anxious for, more than any other race I did because doing 50 miles in like it was in Arches National Park, so doing it in the middle of like desert Utah at 5 in the morning is like kind of intimidating to do for, you don't know what the heck you're getting into because 50 miles is obviously a lot.
Yeah.
So I was way more anxious than this, and this one I was definitely more up in the air. So I remember distinctively like two parts during this 50 mile where I got really nervous was three because I had those ultra Mont Blancs with the boas
The
and
boas?
yeah, the twisty instead of laces you can like twist.
Oh, yep, yep. Hmm.
Um, and I was like so nervous that like I didn't even realize till my friend Connor said because I'm like I don't know what's going on. Like my feet are numb as heck right now at mile 3. Like I couldn't feel my feet. He goes, dude, your shoes are probably too tight. I'm like, oh yeah. So I loosened up my shoes and I'm like, okay, now it's a little bit better. Um,
Nice.
that I distinctly remember where I was like, okay, this is weird. And then mile 20, where I just hit like a bad wall for like pretty much a mile. And I'm like, what the heck am I doing right now? Like, this is such a bad idea. Like, how am I going to get through this? I'm not even halfway.
Was it
So,
all mental? Was it physical too? Or
I would say it was a measure of like the fight or flight adrenaline going, and then um, physical ability with the adrenaline of being nervous and being in the middle of kind of unfamiliarity. I'm like, why am I doing this right now? This is not a good idea. And then, like I said, I was with my friend Connor the entire time, and kind of snapped out of it after a mile. And then I would say I did not really get worried at all till probably about 45. 45, I got really tired. And then really it was just, like I said, if you got that mental capacity and you can keep trucking, we got through it after that 45-mile bout, and then we wrapped it up. So it was good. And besides that, I would say also like I didn't really pull out the headphones till 40. Me and Connor both pulled out the headphones
wow.
at 40.
You're like, it's
'Cause
time to put our heads down and
yeah,
be
we needed it.
distracted. Yeah.
So those are those bouts. So I'd say 3, 20, 40, and 45. Those were like the bouts where I kind of felt it.
And you were just eating what they were giving you at the aid stations?
Oh yeah, dude. I was a garbage barrel. I
Garbage
mean,
disposal.
yeah, like I had gels, I had Morton bars, I had gummy bears, I had some chocolate, uh, I had Coke at some points. I'm trying to
Yeah.
spike my insulin. I was,
Yeah.
like I said, that when I've done the ultras, like it's been a lot more sporadic versus like when you're marathoning, like it's a lot different because you're trying to hold like a certain threshold and have to be very strategic with fueling.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, very sporadic.
Did you eat any like solid food too, like
No,
pizza,
unfortunately, like
hamburger?
no. So because like Arches itself is so rural, like
Oh yeah.
they like there's not really they like didn't have access to be able to like bring pizza or stuff like
Oh
that as it was.
dang.
Yeah, so like there wasn't any like hot food that they could bring because like
Really? Oh.
no, because if you ever been there, it's like way out by itself, so there's not really anything near it. It's gorgeous. It was one of the prettiest things I've ever done. But there's not like
Yeah,
a
but they
there's
can't
not like a
drive.
Domino's next door.
Yeah, and they could, well, yeah, that's interesting because, a lot of the ultra scene is like
I
known
know,
for having awesome food at all
I
the aid
know. You would
stations.
think,
So that's interesting. And I haven't heard that about the Mad Moose races, which I assume you did the Mad Moose
yeah,
arches. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, so I'm in Utah. I don't know if we've even talked about that. That's where I'm
Oh no,
located. So that's my, yeah, I hear about these all the time. Anyway, that's interesting. Okay, but you make
yeah,
it to, oh, sorry, you're going to say something?
no, no, no.
No? Okay, I was just going to say you made it to the end and to the finish line, and I'd like to know how you felt
Yeah,
mentally, emotionally, physically, and also your friend who somehow
yeah.
stuck with you.
Yeah, so long story short, so there was five of us who started. Um, One of my friends is an absolute animal, so he within 3 miles he took off. He actually finished fourth. That's one of my really good friends in
What?
Boston. Yeah, I could recommend you to talk to him. He's a great dude.
Yeah,
Um,
please do.
and and then my other friend had an Achilles injury, and there's two Kyles. My Kyle Ritz, who lives in Denver, and Kyle P, who's from Boston, came with me. So Ritz had an Achilles injury, and KP volunteered to stay with him. So then it just left me and Connor. And Connor, I did not know till I told you my friend Mike, who got in fourth. Connor was Mike's childhood best friend, and I didn't meet him
Okay.
before this at all.
Okay. Didn't know
And I got to know him very well.
him.
Obviously, running 50 miles with him. So yeah, it was just me and Connor, and immediately, like, I'll send you the videos after we're done here. It was just like, I, it's really cool to reflect on. Now that you're making me think about it, but basically, the last mile was like going back on the bike path. If you're familiar with like those bike paths near arches, and I remember just crossing the finish line. We just immediately like just embraced, and we're like, holy crap, dude, like how the heck, like how did that we just moved 50 miles on our feet. And I reflect back, and like I said before, I went to England. I cycle a lot with my dad, and I remember thinking like, how the heck can anyone run a marathon? And here I am, I just ran 50 miles. I'm like, geez, my immediately I'm like, why do people put limits on abilities? Like, it is just fascinating, because I never thought in a million years I'd be able to do that. And I was definitely like it gets you very emotionally stimulated, where I'm like, I like Kyle, who immediately I remember hugging my friend Kyle and just being, he was so proud of me. And just be able to have that support system with a friend group is like, it's truly incredible. And not really like I said, getting into this run clubs and meeting these types of people, like, this is not something I expected when I was like, oh, I want to join a run club when I moved to the city. Like, this is because of this. So community and being able to like share moments with friends like this is just something I'll never forget, for sure. So I was very emotionally in a good headspace after that, and just super grateful and reflective on how lucky I am to be able to move my legs and be able to be in a feat where I can move my body like that at this point in my life. So um, the 50 miler was definitely a lot retrospective on life versus the 50K. I would think I was a lot more emotionally invested in that moment versus the 50K.
That's interesting. Um, you felt pretty amazed at yourself for having done this
Yeah,
crazy thing.
not only with myself, but just like I said, like, to have friendships where you have
Hmm.
other guys who are so willing to push you.
Hmm.
And literally, my friend Ritz, who was the one who set this whole thing up, and I'm like, how grateful am I to be able to meet people like this and have them push me, like, with these limits that I really did not think I was ever going to do something like this. So I would say
Dang.
humbled, um, just how cool Earth is. And yeah, just a bunch of stuff, Brendan. Like, it was just it was a very one of the top moments of my life, for sure.
That's fantastic to hear. um, I ask everybody how they feel when they cross the finish line because it's so different for
Yeah,
everyone. Um, some people, it's a magical experience like that, spiritual even.
spiritual for
Um,
sure.
yeah, and some people it's not. Some people they're like
They just wanted
dying
to get
and
it
they're
done. Yeah,
like, I'm done. Or some people are like you're 50K. Maybe they weren't challenged enough, so they're like,
yeah.
I don't feel anything, and
Oh, trust me,
it's
I was
just
I was sore. I was sore as
yeah,
hell, but
yeah.
that came later on. But yeah, just grateful.
That's sweet. That's sweet. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for being so open and
Yeah,
willing to share what you felt, and man, congratulations on
Oh, thanks, bro.
doing such a hard thing. I hope someday to do a 50 miler myself. Yeah,
Don't hope, man. You gotta make it happen.
I know. I'm
It's you
gonna do the
versus you.
50K and feel it out. See what I need to do to make that next. I already 100% believe that I can do a 50 miler.
Oh, Brendan, I know you can.
Yeah, man. We were talking about, you were talking about how you had that trust in yourself.
Yeah.
For your 50K and maybe even
Yep.
for your 50 miler. I feel that way too. And I think I've built that trust in myself
Hell yeah.
by doing those other steps that have led me to here. You know, I did the
Yeah.
half marathon. That was a big thing. And then I did the marathon, and it was like after the marathon, I know I can do any other distance. I just have to put in the time.
Yeah.
And
Trust the
I
process.
hope exactly trust the process, trust the training. And I know that anybody else, you know, listening to this, it's the same. It's the same for you guys. You just got to put in the time, and you can do this thing.
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to my future and your future too, man, because I'd love to have you share what's next for you in your life.
Sure.
I know you mentioned offline some things coming up. But where are you going from here?
Yeah, so like I said, the last thing I just did was I did the Burlington, Vermont marathon last weekend, pacing a buddy. I'm doing another pacing event this weekend for a lot of my other friends from college for a half marathon, and then the big thing this June, at the end of June, so one of my high school teacher's sons, he was one of my close teachers and also a lacrosse coach. His son's actually battling stage 4 brain cancer right now. So as a self-challenge for myself and to help raise money for him, I've actually am doing a big endurance challenge where I'm doing a total of 126 miles from Williamstown, Mass, which is the most western part of Mass, to Boston Children's Hospital where he's getting treated. So I'm going a back-to-back venture of around 62 miles on the bike and then doing a 100K run the next day. So set at Saturday, Sunday. So that's all to help raise money for him and his family for his medical bills. Because like I said, he was, or I didn't say, but he was basically showing respect when I didn't deserve any when I was like, an 18-year-old meathead. And now, like, because running has become such an influential part of my life, I'm like, there's no better way for me to give back than to do something like that. So I'm doing that in June. And then at the end of the year, at least for now, I'm doing the Lisbon Marathon in Portugal. So I'm doing that in
Nice.
October. And then I'm doing New York again. And then I'm doing the California International Marathon in December, which is where my big selfish goal for myself is I'm trying to do sub 3 for that in December. So that's the remainder of the year, what I got on the docket.
That's sick, dude. And you haven't done a sub 3 before?
No,
Okay.
so my PR, like I said, in New York is 3:10.
3:10. Okay.
But like I was telling you, Brendan, like I've trusted the process and I've done the build up where I'm like, you have to have that confidence in yourself if you do want to keep pushing toward these goals. Doesn't necessarily have to be for time, but it could be distance, or raising money for a charity where like I've found the most confidence in building my life where I can have these goals through these physical feats, and I just have envisioned being able to. And like here's another example, like the 50 miler, like that was one that I thought I could never do, and I remember looking at myself 6 months ago and being like, "There's no way in heck I could ever run a sub 3 marathon. There's no way." And now here I am. I'm like, I 100% could do it just because of the work I've put in and the mileage and the speed work. And um, so if anyone can take anything away from this, is do not sell yourself short on your ability because you can surprise yourself. And I've done it numerous times now, and I will try to keep continuing to do that because that's what can help you grow as a person, whether it's the physical feat, mental feat, or ambitional feats. You just got to keep grinding.
Yeah. Thanks, dude. That's
Yeah,
the perfect final advice to leave, I think. Um, yeah, that was perfect. Thank you for sharing your story, Jake, for sharing your knowledge as an exercise physiologist. Like that's going to be fantastic advice that you've given for other people who listen to this podcast. And just hearing your story, you only started running 4 years ago, and
yeah,
here you are, and it goes fast. Like y'all
yeah,
listening to this, maybe it seems like this guy Jake is like a professional or something, but this guy
uh,
started 4 years ago, and he
yeah,
started from nothing, and he's here now. So just put
yeah.
in the time.
It's never too late either. I met a guy in a run club last week who was 76, and he's still
Yeah,
chugging. So
let's
never
go.
too late, bro.
Never too late. Y'all
Yeah,
get out there and achieve your goals. Sign up for that
yeah,
race.
yeah.
Go get it.
And if anyone wants to give me a follow on my, I have a complete run page where I give mileage breakdowns, strategies, tips, nutrition, running, etc. It's just Jake_runs, and you'll find me on Instagram.
Well, I'm going to write that down, and I'll
Yeah,
share it in the show notes too. Thanks
sweet.
for sharing that.
Thanks so much,
Cool,
Brendan.
man.
We'll have to run it back after you kill that 50K.
That's right. We'll chat again. Thanks, dude.
All right, brother. Appreciate you.
Hey, your host Brendan here. I just wanted to thank you personally for listening to today's episode. As someone preparing for my own first ultramarathon, I've found these conversations to be super valuable, and I hope they are for you as well. Whether you're listening on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or somewhere else, make sure to follow or subscribe so you know when the next episode comes out. Also, make sure you check out the show notes of this episode. There's a link to sign up for the Ordinary to Ultra email newsletter, to join our Facebook and Strava groups where you can meet other people striving to run their first ultra marathon, and see any links that our guests may have provided as well. Thanks again, and we'll catch you in the next episode.